Hello, and welcome to The Road Already Traveled, a podcast where we feature lessons from successful entrepreneurs and the professionals that serve them as they share their inspiring stories and insights. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, I'm Rich Schutte, your host of The Road Already Traveled, where we share lessons from entrepreneurs, like-minded business owners, and the professionals that serve them, providing valuable insights to those listeners who are on the same journey. This episode is brought to you by Avalan, a wealth management firm dedicated to personalized financial, business, and investment planning for entrepreneurs as they make their way in our chaotic world. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? At Avalan, we believe that wealth isn't just about numbers. It's about freedom, security, and living life on your terms. Wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey, our team of experts is here to guide you every step of the way. There are no cookie-cutter solutions, simply smart, personalized strategies designed for your goals. Using our unique Optimal Entrepreneur program and an unwavering focus on world-class service, our relationships are built to last generations, helping clients achieve lifelong goals through a thoughtful and consultative approach. Visit avalanwealth.com today and start building the future you deserve. That's AVALAN wealth.com. Today, I have with me Amit Kothari, who is someone that I cannot even begin to tell you. I have a tremendous amount of respect for this man, both professionally and as someone who's personally come into my life as a mentor and a friend. Amit, I'm going to read your bio here in a second, or parts of it anyways. I'm going to let the rest of the podcast kind of share some light on that. But again, I'm really, really, really excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Rich.
So all of you need to know a couple of things about Amit, aside from the fact that he is just an epic dude. He's an entrepreneur. He's an executive growth mentor, a corporate strategist with experience in leadership transformation, high growth business operations, as well as M&A. This is going to be an amazing show for those of you that are a little bit further along in your entrepreneurial journey as you're trying to figure out who you need to be to get to where you're really going. And I'm sure that as we go through this, Amit's going to have some amazing nuggets that you're going to be able to take away from this and give you good reason to try and find him. He's a CEO and founder of Kothari Leadership Enterprises, KLE. He spent over 15 years helping executives, business owners, and leadership teams achieve breakthrough performance. He has a proprietary methodology that blends EQ, emotional intelligence, right, which is such a big thing that we miss as entrepreneurs, with decisive action, enabling hundreds of leaders that he has served to drive exponential growth. Easy for me to read. There's a lot more here to you as a man. I know you're an amazing father. You're a great entrepreneur. I've watched you coach people, and I've been involved in some of that with you. And it is really remarkable at how you view the world, and something that I'm really excited to share with our audience today.
I think our audience will enjoy our back and forth because we have some shared experiences. So I think, people should be listening for our interactions as well as things each of us individually says. So it'll be good. It'll be good for people to hear that.
Awesome. I can't wait. One thing I want to say is, before we dive into the questions, is that, I'm always very careful to make sure that we create balance and send good messages, meaningful messages that can help make a difference in all of our lives to people. And many of you may be aware that we recently had someone on the show who uses a methodology that's really more aligned with the entrepreneurial operating system, which is a much more, again, it's a methodical checkbox way where you have accountability measures and things like that set in. And it's an amazing way for many of us to get to where we're going. What Amit brings to the table is something different than just a facilitator type of a role. He really is a leadership coach, a genuine coach with everything that he's doing. That's going to help, as I'd mentioned in his bio, create exponential growth in different ways. It's a very different approach, and one approach may be right for some, another for others. And in some cases, maybe you need both, really depending on what your personality is. But this is very different, and it's a way of contrasting different ways to do this. I've always believed that even the most elite professionals need coaching. Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan. It's the best of the best in the athletic world as well. It's like, as good as they got, they still had coaches with them throughout their entire careers. And you could see the difference that different coaches made, right?
Yes.
Are more effective than others. So let's spend some time diving into that as we go today. As all of our listeners know, we always start with some personal questions to try and make the person behind the camera a human as opposed to just a talking head or a resource. Amit, I want you to share outside of your bio piece and some other things that fill in. What do a lot of people not know about you? Like, be it a quirk or a strange habit or a hobby, or just something that you don't share often?
Yeah. Great news. As a part of our coaching, vulnerability is the key to coaching. We don't try to come off as alpha female and males in coaching CEOs. So I'm quite an open book. However, things that your audience may not pick up is I suffer from imposter syndrome. I have historically done so, and I've measured how many days I felt that way during a year. Good news, I'm making progress. But I think at times I think of that imposter syndrome as motivating, because in that anxiety, maybe then I'm focused. And so my brain has caused a neuroscientific impact in that moment to say, get clear, because you have fear it, do something about it. And on the other hand, that energy of anxiety is depleting. So I've also thought about, how do I live from vision, not just from fear? And so on my journey of imposter syndrome, I think that's a cool share for everybody, is to think about it not as a permanent state, but as a state to pass through. And I'm working on that.
We don't have to raise our hands in this room, but it's like, I'm sure a lot of you, if I'd asked the question, may find your hand going up. It's like, how many of you have actually felt that concept of imposter syndrome, no matter how good you are or how far you've come? And it really takes someone on the outside to sit and look at you, knowing what it is that you do, to say, hey, this dude is no imposter, right? But
what a great comment to make. Having imposter syndrome doesn't make you an imposter. It's just a mindset at the moment. Mm-hmm. And so what I love sharing about that deeper secret is we can also be working through it. And so that's what I enjoy talking to myself and friends and leaders about, is how do we reframe how we see ourselves? Because in that space is whatever new creation we're going to make as an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's like, I love that answer. It's, it makes the next question that much more fun to ask, because a lot of people blur the two of them. But tell me something crazy, maybe the craziest thing that you've ever done, or tell our audience.
I wish I was as wild as you, but I will go with multiple times jumping out of a plane. And at my age, with the children I have, is the chance of dying high? No, it's not. But there are people who fear heights, and there are people who think about the consequences of things. And even with the consequences, I've chosen to do that multiple times. So I'm going to go with that answer today. That's publicly disclosed. I would keep something secret.
I would 100% agree that is freaking crazy and something I will never do. And it's something I didn't know about you. So that's pretty cool.
I could add something fun to that one. Me and a group of other CEOs, we landed a plane on a lake in Alaska. So the interesting thing is we were careful to cancel the flight a couple of times due to danger. And a sad part of the story is the next day, a sister company of that flight company had a plane go down and no survivors.
Oh, wow.
So you know what? Every day is precious.
Every day is precious. That's for sure. And I'm glad that you guys are spending this day with us. So where are you from, and what was it like growing up?
Yeah. So I was born in Ohio. My father was an immigrant, and we lived in Canada and Europe, and then came back to the headquarters of Procter & Gamble, where my dad worked in Cincinnati. And my father had brought multiple sisters of his over from India. He had a total of 6 sisters. 4 he brought here, 2 remained in India. And in that story, he was the only and eldest son who did something for his family. And somewhere he got trapped in that story, I believe, and he became bipolar when I was 12 years old. And so we moved from what I thought was an idyllic childhood where I was baseball captain, I was able to travel the world, to a place where we had uncertainty about our living situation and income. So I moved to California, and that is probably where my self-doubt began, I'm guessing. And I noticed that I was able to get certain grades and get accepted certain colleges, and yet I didn't feel good inside. And that sort of went on into my 20s, where I worked for a global consulting firm, did mergers and acquisitions consulting around the world, and yet didn't feel whole, to the point where then I became the CFO of a public company at 27, 28 years old. And we grew that from 30 to 110 million. But the whole time I was filled with anxiety. So if you looked at my resume, you thought I was amazing. And if you spoke to me honestly, you would have found out how worried I was. And so that juxtaposition has become the foundation of the emotional and business acumen practice that we have today.
Yeah, that journey it's very touching, by the way. And again, that's one of the reasons I love doing this, is there's always so much to learn about the people you care about and that come through, your life. But that journey must have served you so well in what it is that you're doing today.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the choice to share that journey, Rich, not only helped my soul feel more free and light so that I could handle the challenges I choose to take on every day today. So I'm not carrying baggage. I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to stay light. But I also, will tell you it has business implication. I spoke to a prospective client of mine just on Friday, $650 million global company. And when I shared this part of the story as part of the interview process, the individual was able to share they had a child that was bipolar, which is what my dad was. And we got to speaking about went from interview to having a friendly chat about some solutions that individual could apply in their lives today. And that just made me feel great. It also connected me as a human being with me as a business person, and I can be one all times, all the time. And that, again, helps keep myself and entrepreneurs light. So hopefully the CEOs and entrepreneurs who are listening today can sort of keep track of the tick boxes of how many pieces of wisdom they're getting today already in hearing you speak to us.
Well, hearing you speak to us, for sure, it's fascinating, because one of the things I have learned as I've done this show and with the interviews that we've been able to bring to this audience is that, one thing that entrepreneurs tend to have in common is that we've got some experience along the way that was a challenge that your average person may not have necessarily encountered. And I think it actually fundamentally changes how we're wired and how we respond to things. And I just want you as a listening audience to embrace that. Just know it's part of what makes us special.
That's wonderful, Rich. Let me try to plus one you. Let me add to something you're saying in my coaching practice. There is the story that we had, and then there's a question of, does that story that does serve us? There's no question. Then there may be a time where we want to change everything. So now, how do we not stay anchored to that story? Because the truth is, in a book such as Untethered Soul,
Yep.
There's a concept of letting go of that story and starting from nothing. And if you can believe that, if you can get there and put away that weight you carry, there's a possibility you could access new outcomes that you couldn't otherwise when anchored to the old story. As much as you want to honor your past and not forget it, there's also a chance to rebuild a story from something different, some different energy. So I'm working on how to continue to express myself boldly and not only vulnerably. I'm good at expressing all my vulnerability, but I'm also working on having my boldness be expressed without sounding like ego or my perception of ego, because I don't want to sound like that. But some CEOs need to hear me talk like that because they're alpha, high growth CEOs. We do have some of our clients as such. 30% of our clients are successful and want to grow. 70% come to us in needing something. And there's a different mindset in both cases. And the question is, who do I attract? And who do I want to attract? So I'm playing with this other persona now which has to put away every morning when I meditate, put away the old story and live. And I have the chance to practice and live into a new one. And I find that exhilarating because all of us entrepreneurs need something new. When something gets old and boring, we want to walk away. So I really enjoy practicing with something new, and I can do it for free because it's my own brain I can practice with.
Yeah, it sounds like you've worked with enough entrepreneurs, including yourself, that you understand our wiring. Yes.
I hope I can be of service. Yes.
If you all want to take an easy way out, right, and just take one nugget out of this thing that won't take much work or effort, and there's going to be more that's coming. But Untethered Soul is an excellent read and an absolute brilliant place to start to right size your mindset.
Yes,
that was a great ad. Thank you.
Yeah.
So growing up, did you think you were going to wind up being, doing M&A for Arthur Andersen, and then making your own journey into this epic coaching and executive leadership program that you're doing now, or what did you think you wanted to do?
It's amazing. I didn't think I could be an entrepreneur, and I would say consulting is a light form of entrepreneurship. I'm not shy about mentioning that. I use my energy for the 15 to 20 CEOs we're helping concurrently, them and their executive teams. We have a couple of clients who are worth $1 billion. We have our prospects are 10 to 100 million is where we enjoy working. But we do have some clients, like I told you about the $650 million prospect. We have some current clients from 100 to 350 million. And I put all my energy into them and the way they work and think. That's where my heart is. There probably could be better ways to make money. I don't know. But this is sort of the place I connect. Sorry, what was your question again, Rich?
So we know you didn't foresee this being what your life
yes.
would look like, but what did you want? What did you see it as a kid? I mean, what did you think you were going to wind up being?
I actually didn't know. And I was thinking what my parents told me was what I was going to do when I was 18. My dad was quite a force when he was in his manic states of bipolarism. But when I got to college, thank God, I guess professors and my grades guided me. Things where my mind, I was fortunate to learn how to adapt rather than have a fixed mindset where I must succeed where my parents told me. I had the blessing to have my mind sort of be able to move on to whatever it was meant, wherever it was meant to be. So I remember a moment in college where I tried 5 different majors. And then I ended up going to a business meeting in my junior year. And I just felt light. I felt like I belonged. I felt like the conversation clicked with where my brain was. And from that point on, I committed to having a business major. And in that, I did not know what I was going to do. One of my toughest moments was when I got an offer from Goldman Sachs in Tokyo in investment banking. And at that time, Japan and investment banking and Goldman Sachs were pretty badass in terms of a superficial resume. Well, they pulled the offer 3 months later because Japan and its economy were tanking. And looking back, at the time I was hyper depressed. But looking back, maybe it wasn't the right place for me. Maybe I'm a bit softer soul than those folks. And maybe people and I've said this often lately, I prefer people over profit. Yet I'm in the business of both now. So I get to work through people to make their dreams come true, which includes profit. And I didn't envision that when I came out of college. I went through, but I can see the connections of the dots. Early in my career, I was a global M&A consultant. And in doing so, I got to meet hundreds of businesses with thousands of executives and ask them about their business and the value of their business and what was created, and why they would sell, how they would sell their business for more to somebody. And so that was interesting as one of the parts of what I do today in helping CEOs grow value. And then in 2 cases, I was part of teams as CFO and COO that helped grow value for companies that needed that unlocking, for private equity firms that were prominent in Silicon Valley, and went on and raised with a co-founder. He was the lead. I was the CFO. Raised 25 million in a startup in the high-tech space that failed. And I learned a lot from that. VCs in that case were extremely prominent in Silicon Valley then too. So I did not imagine the successes and failures and how I could word them at the time. Looking back, they were all experiences that built a resume that allow me now to manifest who I want to be every day. And that's probably the most meaningful thing I can say now. Combining the emotional journey of my childhood, I've now leveraged the tens of thousands of dollars I've spent on therapy and all the books I've read with the business successes I've had. One being taking a company from 30 to 110 million in 4 years, and another one taking a 20-year-old company from 15 million to 45, and then exiting for over 100. Those experiences, plus now others in the consulting space where we help clients get exits, is something I couldn't have imagined I would do. And being able to look back and say, that's who I was, that's why I made that choice, is so interesting. And now I want to take that for my next 20 years and plan it better. I want to plan even more than I already do who I want to be and see if I can manifest that plus some.
So I love that nugget too. And my initial thought was like, oh, here's nugget 2, but this is probably already nugget 6 or 7. But taking your experiences, knowing who you are, to use what you've gone through to manifest every day what you want to be.
Yes.
That's really powerful, brother.
Rich, right now, what I'm sitting in, right, for more advanced CEOs and entrepreneurs, what I'm sitting in now is, who is my team and how do I get the right diversity on the team in a way that doesn't irritate? How do I shift my mindset to accept people who think differently than me that then make Kothari leadership holistically better? And in my case, I thought I was a finance guy who thinks and plods and overplans. What I'm learning is I'm a little, not 100%, I'm a little bit more of an entrepreneur, and I value more thorough people on my team after I get done being irritated with them being slow. I really value that they're building the infrastructure that pushes Kothari Leadership into an eight-figure consulting business from a 7-figure consulting business. And I'm finding that to be an interesting game I'm playing now, because I don't have to have all the answers. I need to build a team that does.
So I want to take what you just said and loop it back to something you said earlier. I was going to save this for like a transition, but I need to jump on it now so it's fresh. You'd said that you didn't see yourself necessarily as an entrepreneur, and then you followed that up by saying it's like, well, in consulting, it's really entrepreneur light, right? And then you just said what you said about building this team and surrounding yourself with launching what you're doing into an 8-figure business, right? That is not entrepreneurship light, right? That is, and what I want to leave our audience with is this concept of what an entrepreneur is different to everybody, right? And Amit, I'm going to challenge you to think about how maybe that comment goes into some of your imposter syndrome that you carry.
There
right?
you go.
Because at the end of the day, an entrepreneur is it's a very loose definition, right? You have schools that are now teaching entrepreneurism and entrepreneurship that is teaching people that will never be entrepreneurs to try and be entrepreneurs because it's a sexy term these days.
Yeah.
And it is something special. It is a mindset, right? It's that mindset of, it's not owning a business. That doesn't make you an entrepreneur, right? But it's somebody that's thinking beyond what you own in terms of what you can push that into being. It doesn't necessarily mean an 8-figure business for everyone. For others, it may be a lifestyle type of a business. But it's a very different concept of buying a franchise and calling yourself an entrepreneur. And I don't want to discredit that, right? But it's a different version. And as a franchise owner, you can be an entrepreneur, but many that go down that road aren't by definition. And it becomes, there is no definition, I guess, by what I'm trying to say. It really is mindset.
Yeah.
I really want our audience to take that with them.
Yeah. Maybe some cool words that someone can think of is resilience. Someone that spends time with some amount of vision, right? So entrepreneur, if we think of some attributes, another one could be a certain amount of empathy to build a team. But, I sometimes have too much empathy and it slows me down. So I've also been playing with the idea of there's a right amount of empathy when you're running a business, because you got to try ideas and sometimes you'll make mistakes with people. So you can't hang on to everybody as you're going along this journey. And then maybe there's some amount of financial acumen one has to have an entrepreneur. to make fast decisions.
1,000%. I agree. I mean, that's again, nugget number, Lord knows what. That's pretty special. I think I was going to ask you, I want to get into the meat of things, so I want to be sensitive to time. I was going to ask you about influences. Clearly in your story, your dad was definitely an influence in your life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are others along the way. Maybe we can talk about that at the end if we talk about mentors here and there, because I do think that they're important. But what I want to do, I think, is I go into these things kind of open-minded. I know I'm sitting down with an entrepreneur, but I also know that I'm sitting down with somebody that makes entrepreneurs' lives better, right? As a professional person.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think we've done a really good job of showing this audience that you are an entrepreneur and is interested in, maybe that's another interview down the road about your entrepreneurial journey. But I want to talk a little bit more, for the purpose of the audience, more about your impact on other entrepreneurs as a professional that serves them. Is that fair?
That's fair. And a foundational point of that is it's come back in time and time again in interviewing the CEOs and C-level executives who end up hiring us. We've interviewed quite a few. Hope is where they start. Even the ones who are successful already, they were feeling something that had a little bit of pressure in them that they wanted to reach out outside themselves. So the word hope is something that could be fun to play with it and interdisperse somewhere as we go through. The CEOs have come back and said, we give them hope.
Fascinating. Yeah. I like that. I think that, again, as we try and get into the meat of how you really serve entrepreneurs and how what you do is so valuable, right, and important. I've got my questions that I like to go through and stick. I'm the guy in the clouds, but when it comes to this, it's like I like to stay on the ground, like in my little box. And I'm like, well, I didn't ask this question, but you kind of answered it. Like, it's like, what got you here, right? Well, you kind of talked about that, right? It's like, what were the early days of your career like? It's like, well, maybe you can touch on that a little bit, but like, what was it like when, you put up your little sign that said Kothari Leadership? What did that feel like?
It felt alone. It felt like a empty, it didn't feel, it was an empty room with a computer and a phone and a question of what do I do next? And at that time I'd been a corporate executive. So it really required me to let go of the ego that corporate executives have and become an entrepreneur. Be curious, not judgmental. Ask for help. Don't think you know the answer. Some other really critical foundations of entrepreneurship. And so I picked up the phone, asked friends, would you like some advice? They said yes. And then my next important question was, would you like to pay for it? And thank God, in the first couple of weeks, folks who had known me to be a coach and a friend who always was willing to give advice and help, they said yes. And so my first clients were VP level folks. And then over 6 or 8 years, as we helped enough of them, I started having this hunger. I started noticing a block to the VP's growth. And it came from above. How the C-level team behaved, what they thought, what they were interested in. And so what some of the C-level executives noticed was a change in their VPs. Hey, I want to meet this guy. And that begot the beginning of helping C-level executives. And it didn't become solid until year 9 or 10, when I worked with enough C-level executives to then go, okay, this is the pace, this is the rhythm. I got comfortable with what I was delivering. And then we started having a model where we do 3 things. We coach C-level executives. We facilitate strategy, within which at times EOS fits in, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
And we work on operational projects. And so we see we hear how you feel during coaching. We're able to collaborate with you on how you think in strategic planning. And I'll get back to that in a second. It's a really critical point there. And then we see how you work or what you do. So feel, think, and do. And when you open yourself up to being seen as a whole leader, that can what I love about our model is that can transform into scalable results. Because all we do is grow businesses. We happen to do it with emotional intelligence coaching and business acumen. One critical thing I want to talk about in strategic planning, which entrepreneurs they start out with their intuition. Whatever years of experience they have boils down into, hey, I make quick choices. And often entrepreneurs, we tell ourselves that. And, you could argue what's the truth? You could argue it's true. Well, within that, there's strategic planning, whatever amount of education you've had or not, whatever amount of instinct you use or test data that you use, at some point, entrepreneurs make decisions. And often it's couched in, I just make choices. Well, we try to slow that down. And we try to teach a team on behalf of an entrepreneur to learn how to think. And in that longer term thinking, there are really boring things like getting data and doing market research. But when we help executives slow down and do that thinking and create plans that match their vision, it increases the probability they actually will scale. And that's why we have so many good exit stories, is because we withstand the fire of the entrepreneur who says, I want to choose now. In fact, I was literally the hour before this, I was on a call with 3 succession-based members of the family who are taking over for the founder. The founder was on the call and is passing on the business to the successors, but he's still involved. Amit, we got to move fast. We got to make this decision now. That's what I'm used to. Should we slow down? And the minute he said the word slow down, I knew I could be in trouble as a consultant. Sir, we're not going to slow down. We're going to take what you're saying. We're going to teach the successors how to think differently as we go forward. But no, we're going to keep moving fast. He goes, Amit, I like when you say fast. I go, this is not the first time I've done this, sir. And so this $350 million company is trying to work on hiring a key executive, but they're doing it in one interview, where I usually ask companies of that size with this important of a role to spend 14 to 16 hours with someone between each member of our team and the Kothari leadership team, plus the employees of the company. Because obviously we want to make sure we're making a critical choice for someone who's $500,000 or more in compensation. So strategic planning and how we think about our business in the long term and making the right choices of what we should be doing, in what spaces we should be playing, help anchor things like hiring. Because, for example, in this conversation I just shared with you, the team said, well, what are we going to talk to him about next? We're going to give him an offer. I said, well, is money what's going to hook him? No, our vision is. Well, what's our vision? Well, we haven't worked on that. We're just started working with you. Well, now you see, when I tell you to work on long-term planning, this individual is so mature, they want to talk about that, but you don't have an answer for that. So an interesting connection there of even how long-term planning practically shows up when you're meeting with sophisticated people.
A couple things that struck me through a lot of what you were just saying is, like, entrepreneurs do move fast, and especially when it comes to the mindset of like, I'm building something and I want to exit and I want to do that successfully and I want a big check. And that doesn't just happen, right? It is slowing that down. Successful exits start years before the exit, right? Would you concur with that?
I would. And there are very few books written about the arduous journey, because that isn't sexy writing, right? There's some snippets of it, but mostly people talk about the exit itself and the negotiation and who bought whom and where it went from there. It's interesting, right? As human beings, what we get interested in, but the real work is the entrepreneur's work in the dark when nobody's looking.
So I'm going to ask you a question about as you were getting started, and I can tell you along my way that I'm asking this question from my own perception and my own experiences of what people like or don't, because sometimes it's hard to be told maybe what you don't want to hear. And that's a huge deal in like the financial services industry, right? Because everybody wants the best performing portfolios for the least amount of risk and, all that, right? But I'm curious as to when you started, dialing for dollars and you opened up the door, reaching out to these people that you said, hey, do you want some advice? And then the critical question of, would you like to pay for it? How many of those actually found it easier to pay for than to take the advice?
That's really good. It is because of how hard it was to get them to take action. And that's a really I didn't even know this would come up. This is the beauty of your open-minded conversations. We all have wisdom. There's books, and even more so than 20 years ago, there's the internet, and now there's AI. It's not what we learn, it's what we do. And the application of wisdom in your specific situation is what Kothari Leadership does the best. So that hardest question is the complexity that gets me up every day. Does it make me doubt myself? Does it cause anxiety? Hell yeah. But it's the game I've chosen to play across, at any 1 minute, 15 or more CEOs and their companies. That game of coaching an individual to open their mind. So to answer your question really specifically, within Kothari Leadership, within our model is build trust early and deep, because it's not what I say. It's what someone can absorb to then take that advice in the context of their business. So in terms of scaling businesses strategically, that's what we do. I then have a differentiation that we apply wisdom better than anyone else, and therefore a tactic that we must build trust fast and early. So in our introductory materials to CEOs who work with us, we talk about trust between us as an important part of a coaching relationship, which not everyone talks about in consulting and coaching. And for those who do, it may seem obvious, but it is based on radical candor and caring. And that's the hard part, as you know, Rich.
Look, so many of us get to a point where we know that we need coaching, and we'll go down that road and we'll start something and we never finish it because it's hard and we're not always hearing what we want to hear. And when I think of one of the most critical times to really dive into a coach is when you think that what you're hearing isn't comfortable, right? Because that's where the wins come from.
And when you heard me say about 20 minutes ago, when we interviewed CEOs, the word that came back from all of them was we give them hope. I think that is so appropriate now in this moment, because where does resistance come from? It's believing what you have or your idea is going to work better than someone else's. But for a CEO who comes to us, 70% of the time, those ideas haven't been working in certain parts of what they're doing. Overall, they're successful businesses. We help successful companies. But a CEO is humble enough to say, well, something's not working. So in that space, to open up and create trust and then have them feel hope, then that's the oil that allows ideas to flow between us. And then we start debating, not whose idea is better, but the best idea. So in coaching, creating that foundation of trust where we can debate is another important element of a company scaling.
There's so much that I'm taking from this. A couple times I've buried my head down. I've taken some of my own notes. It's like, your concept of working through, and I'm taking away what you feel is a big deal, right? And how you think and what you think is a big deal, but it really is what you do, right? And that's a hurdle so when I start to think about the value of what someone like you in your chosen profession can bring to an entrepreneur, like sometimes it's the hardest thing for us to do is to do. Right?
Imagine a story where there's a CEO who's got a $3 or $4 million business, but is having family troubles, is not showing up to work, but 1 day a week, and cash flow is draining. They have a couple of houses. So imagine the dichotomy of saying, I'm successful, but the facts are it's not working. So how do they open their mind up to then say, I was successful, I can be successful again, but there are things I'm clearly not doing well right now. That's an extreme story I give you because it's such an obvious one, but it's a real story at Kothari Leadership where we then end up in an exit 3 years later for 8 figures.
So I just talked about, right, the doing piece being the hardest, and a lot of us knowing that there's a need and pursuing it, but then not having the courage, right, or the stomach to take it further. We as entrepreneurs learn through examples, and so I want you to, if you could, maybe highlight quickly. I think we've done a good job of understanding why what you do is so important to those of us that are listening to this, and we could go on with that for hours, but maybe you can give us a quick nugget of a story, right? Where an example of where somebody didn't see it through or didn't listen to you, where you're like, oh my God, if they would have only, Right. And then another example of like where someone just had that light bulb go off and it's like, wow, this is what we did. Just a couple of quick stories.
Let,
No,
let me
only
let
got-
me try to start with the positive one first, and I'll try to come up with the one that didn't, because those are sad to me.
yeah.
um, so very uh, good mid-tier service firm, and they had 7 offices in California. They had 2 partners in the Southern California office. I started coaching those 2 partners plus 6 non-partners. Over the next 10 years, we tripled the size of the practice in Southern California, and I ended up coaching the head of office, and so that firm grew from 80 million to 250 million in 10 years, and the service firm, very highly intelligent, very well educated, white collar workers, and they wanted to do. They wanted to get things done. Their skill was knowing, and if you know, then you're powerful. We opened them up to feeling and connecting to their teams, and more importantly, connecting to their clients and how to market to them differently. Those same folks over that 10 years went from earning 200 to 300,000 to million a year. And those individuals I'm talking about, those 6, exited for 7 and 8 figures based on their partnership ranking. And what was striking about that story is they help C-level executives with their service. But inside, they had just learned how to work their business from a corporation. They ended up at this mid-tier firm. They lacked the scaling skills. They lacked the wisdom, experience on how to scale. So we had to get into their minds the understanding that they understood a lot of things, but they didn't understand how to scale a business. And so that scaling wisdom is what we had to work on trust and give them some examples and do team facilitation to open their minds to the EQ and the business acumen journey of scaling. And when they open their minds up to it, now their lives are great. They're friends of mine now. They've been friends of mine, but they now have nice big homes along with whatever else.
I love that. And I'm going to actually save you from that moment of having to draw from the negative. I love the positive. There's a couple more things in our last 6 minutes that we have together that I want to make sure that I get out. I want to give you an opportunity, if you had any mentors that you would want to just give a shout out to here, maybe an opportunity for them to hear what they've meant to you.
Absolutely. A gentleman, and the word gentleman fits him, Vance Caesar, is a coach, executive coach in Orange County who doesn't need any more business, but he is an absolute light to many, many, many of us executives in Orange County. And he is absolutely like a father to me. And I'm very grateful that I found him when I did in my 20s. And I see him here and there nowadays. I should stay in better touch. And I say that to him every time I see him. But I'm just so grateful. I wouldn't be the man I am without Vance.
That's great. And I love to be able to give our guests the opportunity to, that's so cool. It means so much to all of us to have that person. And so I'm grateful for Vance on your behalf. That's really cool.
Thank you.
I got a couple of questions left that I want to ask. We don't have enough time to do both of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an option to choose between them. But before I ask those 2 questions, what I want to do is give you an opportunity to speak to our audience and let them know where they might be able to find you. Because I'm telling you right now, it's like after listening to this, I'm like, you know what, maybe I need to call a meet. There's a lot here. You shared a lot that's got me excited about the things that we really need to be thinking about for entrepreneurs. So if somebody else felt the same way that I felt in this conversation, how do they find you, Amit?
Thank you. You can look me up on LinkedIn under Amit Kothari. There'll be a few of them, but you'll recognize me now. And then at our website at www.kotharileadership.com. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'm excited to speak to those who have a true interest in this journey and are open and curious to what's possible.
Awesome. And for those of you not watching and listening, Kothari is Kothari. leadership.com. So find it. I don't think you'll be disappointed. You are a super cool dude. So
Thank you.
the two questions you can choose from, right? One of them I like to ask is like, share with me one of your proudest moments in this journey, right? Whether it be a success for a client or yourself. Or the second question that I would ask is like, what do you want to be your legacy, right? For what you're adding to the business that you're in? How do you want to be remembered when you're not doing this anymore? So I'm going to let you pick wherever you think we have the most impact. We've got 3 minutes before a hard stop. So keep that in mind as we count it down and go.
Absolutely. I think I'm not going to choose the second question because I do this work to be in the moment and to make a difference in people's lives. And what they do with that afterwards is up to them. I don't seek a big ceremony during my passing or anything like that. So I just want people to be happy in the moment and create joy. So what was the first question quickly?
Proudest moment, like either for yourself or maybe one of your clients, either way.
Yeah. I'm really happy for a client that had a family dynamic where they were falling apart. And by 2 generations being in the same business, when we got to slow down and have the older generation sort of open themselves up to the speed at which they were going and the harshness of their words, and they opened space for the next generation to come in and lead, there was always love there, but it was always testy. And when we got to the other side of the 4 different individuals exploring their friction with each other, what we saw was hugs. What we saw was alignment. What we saw was honoring of each other, such that the next generation have come along and grown the business further and taking it over. And right, that speaks to family. That speaks to community. That speaks to that family itself supporting multiple. I think it's 300 other families across all of California from north to south. So I'm really happy for and proud of being in the transformation of business, but more importantly, people who transform businesses.
What a perfect way to close this. Thank you so much. Amit, thank you for your time. For those of you tuning in, as you have been in the past, don't forget you can find us not only on YouTube, but also on the most popular podcast platforms, be it Spotify, Apple, Google, otherwise. You can find us there. Make sure you subscribe, hit like, all those other good things to The Road Already Traveled. Thank you for taking this journey with us. And until next time, we'll see you here on The Road Already Traveled.
As always, thanks for joining us on the Road Already Traveled podcast. We're grateful you've joined our community and look forward to seeing you again for our next installment, so be sure to click subscribe so you won't miss a thing. This communication is for informational purposes only and does not purport to be a complete statement of all material facts related to any company, industry, or security mentioned. This material is limited to the dissemination of general information pertaining to its diversified services. The opinions expressed reflect our judgment now and are subject to change without notice and may or may not be updated. The information provided, while not guaranteed as to accuracy or completeness, has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable. Financial planning, advisory, and/or consulting services offered through Avalan LLC, a registered investment advisor. Prospects or clients who take advantage of any free consultations or services are under no obligation to hire Avalan LLC as their investment advisor. Listeners who are not market professionals or institutional clients of Avalan LLC should seek the advice of their financial advisor before making any investment decisions based on this communication. Additional information on any securities mentioned is available on request.